Happy Thursday, my friends. About to say Tuesday. Somehow I have lost track of time. I don't know how that's happened, but I am so stoked to be here as always on Lean Coaching for Lean Coaches. And we're going to talk about a fun topic today. And I really want to get you guys in on the conversation as we're talking, because I'm sure there are some strong opinions on the use of this tool in the market, especially for those of us that do consulting and are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, but you might as well if you're not, if you're just using this tool as something to help you get your schedule in order. And what I'm talking about is the app Calendly. We're going to have a conversation today about its use in booking conversations, especially exploration calls, sales calls, whatever you might call them. As you know, this is my jam, helping you as lean coaches and consultants really be able to move from being in that space of uncertainty and struggle to actually thriving and having paying customers coming into you and to talking to you, having those conversations and really thriving as a business. Now, at the end of the chat today, I'll have an offer for you to be able to have a conversation and be able to help you with things like this to, again, help your business thrive. So, of course, I'm here for you for that. Let's dive into this conversation around Calendly and using it in the DMs. And I'd love to get your opinion on this. Do you use Calendly? If so, how do you use Calendly in your business or in just in your life in general, or just any other or automated scheduling type of applications? So, I want to talk about 3 reasons why I don't find this effective, and 3 reasons or 3 ways to be able to do something a little bit different. Now, when I'm talking about Calendly in this context, I'm talking about it specifically in my experience on LinkedIn. And I suppose you could translate this to other platforms as well. And I'm talking about it specifically in the DMs when you're having a conversation with somebody and you've gotten to that point where, and if you have some questions about how to get to this point, there are other videos that I've done on this and how to start a conversation and make it natural and then move forward and then be able to get to the point of, would you be open to the conversation where we would explore what it would look like to work together? Very simple, straight to the point. I know I can help you. Would you be open to this conversation? Once they say yes, then, okay, what do you do from that point on to be able to get the person from, okay, cool, they're excited, you've listened to them, you've taken the time to be able to understand what their pain point is, where they're headed to, why they're experiencing this. So they've gotten to the point of trust you to actually say, yes, I'd love to have a conversation with you. And so um, once you get to that point, what do you do? And I think that's the question that a lot of people have. And Daryl, thanks for hopping in today. Great to have you here. And definitely let me know how you use Calendly, and whoever else is joining us today. Would love to hear from you as well. Um, so it's when you get to that point of making, you've made that offer, they're there, they're with you. Okay, so now what do you do? I don't know most people's experience with this, but I'm speaking from my own personal experience and what's actually worked to get people into booking in a call, like actually having something on the calendar and then actually having people show up to that conversation. Because, of course, it does you no good if you have a conversation scheduled if they don't show up to the conversation as well. So, 3 reasons why that, Calendly, in my view, again, in the DMs, hasn't doesn't isn't effective in being able to get appointments actually booked and people showing up. First is the technology. And familiarity with technology. Now, I use Calendly in some other spaces where, again, it's not in a sales mode. It's more of a networking kind of conversation or a catch up with somebody. So for me, getting this right is an integral part of my business. So if I can't get somebody into like that conversation, if I'm not making that easy, then it's not going to happen. So if somebody, if I were to drop a link, say you created some type of event in Calendly, like for an exploration call or whatnot, and the person isn't familiar with the technology, then they're not going to like once they get in, they're going to be like, well, what do I do here? Especially if, your dates again aren't like there's not a framework for the date. So if you've got like a whole bunch of dates, which will come here in just a moment in our conversation, but it's that familiarity with the technology that can be a real challenge when you're jumping in and somebody, clicking and okay, I don't know what to do here. And then also what can happen too, let's say they get through that, they choose a date and they get the invite. Well, maybe it gets lost somehow. They type a wrong email address in, or it gets lost in their email box. So we want to make it a lot easier for them than that. The second piece for me and I think I was going to say the most challenging one with using Calendly. Don't know that it is. There's another one here we'll share. But there's too many options too often. From my experience, what I've seen people do is you create an event and then you open up your whole calendar from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and so depending on how busy you are, it will show like 7 openings a day. Now a way to be able to not instill trust is, at least in my experience, from my point of view and what I hear many other business coaches talk about, is when you have your schedule sitting in your Calendly and it's showing all that of free time. Well, do you have a viable business? Are you actually helping people? Are you someone I can trust? If you don't really have any business, or you're not working and building your business and your schedule is all free, then I'm trying to connect the dots here in terms of there's not a lot of trust that's built if you're not actually doing business. So there's that proof of, oh, okay, well, he only has a couple slots here. So it's that whole, um, that scarcity kind of like, oh, I need to get in on this right now, and choose this option. So too many times with those Calendly options, like when I see people and they're, when I have somebody that offers me that and I go in, I see so many options. It's kind of like, okay, well, I guess you're super free, like, and I can suppose that somebody could say that maybe there's a benefit to somebody having all those options to choose from to make sure that they can have one that fits. At the same time, you want to make sure that the person, um, that they see you as a person that's an authority and they're placing trust in you. And if you have so many options, they may just sense that you're like, ugh, all over the place. Um, the other piece about Calendly that I think is really, really challenging is that it's impersonal. So if you just are like, okay, great, booking a call here, then it's really leaving out another opportunity for you to connect with the person that you're having a conversation with. And again, if you've already come to the place of having a conversation with someone, then putting it in that space, yes, I know as lean folks, we want to make the process easy, and that's the idea behind using Calendly. We're making it automated, we're making it easy. Um, it actually isn't, right? And it's creating that technology barrier in like, oh, okay. Um, because then you're like, okay, we'll go from there. Like, just book in and we'll go from there. And it really, when technology comes into the space, you're losing out on an opportunity to make it personal, to continue to build that connection. Um, so those are the three reasons I would say, that technology, the user familiarity, and the tech challenges that are involved in that. Um, Having too many options when you do Calendly and you send an invitation or a link to an event, and last, it being impersonal and that space of, well, we're in a conversation and then you just drop a link. So I'd love to hear again from you for those of you who are here today, and thank you again for dropping in today. What's your experience using Calendly? It's would love to hear because there's definitely I'm learning as I go, and like I said, I do use Calendly in some contexts, but for booking in sales calls, um, um, that's the challenge. That's the challenge for me. And so, Daryl, you're diving in right where I'm headed here. So, thank you for sharing that. And when given two options, I'll choose one. Give me two chimney choices, and I'll stall absolutely to fit in my schedule sometime. That's exactly it. So, what I would say in contrast here um, is this is the process I use, and it's a process I used a week or two back to book in six exploration calls. And of course, following that process that I did to be able to get to the point of making the offer, but actually getting the call booked in. And to your point, Daryl, of, oh, well, I'll just, when you give them the Calendly, then of course you're banking on them actually making the choice and actually clicking in. Because that's been my experience too, I suppose, is one thing to add to that list of why not is that you're putting it in the hands of the person to go and choose, and um there's no immediacy to it. They'll just do it when they have time. So thank you, Daryl, for surfacing that. That as I'm thinking about it now, that totally makes sense. And I think about the folks when I had my experiences using Calendly and thinking, oh, this is great. This is a wonderful tool. It'll just drop create the Zoom link and do all this. Well, people will take their time when they do that. Okay, well, I'll get back to that message and click on the link and then go in and do it. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. This Sam is great, or Daryl, whoever, they're awesome. I want to have a conversation, and then they never get around to it. So what do you do? So these is really easy for me is first checking my own calendar and making sure, okay, what are the options that I have free, where I have the 45 minutes or hour in my schedule time that works for me. And then make sure that you go check with the person that you're booking into what time zone are they in, and make sure you translate that to your own time. That's really important. Um, so check your time, and when you're free, check their time zone, and then offer two options. When you go to what's that? When you go to the store and you have, like, they put out six options for a specific type of jam or jelly. Would you choose from that, or just a line where there's just two, like either strawberry or raspberry? When you have like 17 different types, it just makes it so challenging. And then you don't even ever choose. So, again, in all these, in this last week where I had the six converse calls that got booked in, use this same process. And I just said, Awesome. Looking forward to having a conversation. What works better for you? Wednesday at 2 p.m. or Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you checked in. And what would be the best email to send that Zoom invite to? Bingo. You've done just what Daryl said there. And you gave them two options. And now some folks might say, well, what if those don't work from them? Well, the brilliant thing about that question is they're going to say, "Oh, well, that like neither of those work." Or actually, so you're either going to get, you know, three options will happen here. Either one, they'll tell you, "Okay, Wednesday at 2 o'clock works for me, and my email is," or they'll say, "Well, none of those options work for me, but this will work for me," or they'll say they won't say anything; they'll just not respond. So, of course, with the first one, then you would go ahead and right away create that Zoom invite and send it along to their email and let them know, hey, just sent that along. Really looking forward to our conversation. And there you go. You've got that booked in. For the second one, where they're like, well, that doesn't fit my schedule, but this does. Oh, great, cool. How does this time work for you? So now that they've given you like, okay, well, Wednesday at 2 doesn't work and Thursday at 4 doesn't work, and they've told you if they don't tell you in that message, then you can just offer, well, how does this time work? So offering them another time, or they'll likely say, because you've given them two options, they're going to give you what works for them. So at that point, then you check your schedule and then you can say, okay, great. What's a good email for me to send this over at this time? And you're spot on here, Daryl, about the FOMO, right? It's about beginning the conversation and fine tuning the dates, right? And that's the part of, you've been doing that throughout the DM conversation. You've gotten to this point. So getting the time set in is, and continue it, especially if you've created, like they're starting to process, okay, this is pain, this is a problem. Yes, I could use the conversation to explore working together. And yeah, jumping in and actually offering those times, because they may say, no, those times don't work for me. Well, great. Okay, those times don't work. So then they're not saying, no, I don't want to meet with you. They're saying those times don't work. So then offer them another time. And, if they don't say what does work for them, because typically in my experience, people will say what does, and then you can go from there. Well, how about we book in for this time then, and and then you go ahead and send the Zoom invite. The last one, and I get a lot of, from folks that I work with. Well, what do you do when someone doesn't reply? Because you'll have that point, whether you're in the middle of this kind of conversation or you're making this offer, and then you get to the point of offering the times. What do you do? And I typically, so I use an application called Notion, where I've created or had a coach of mine help me create, or he created a CRM. So basically, it gives me a reminder. Like, so I've talked to them on today's the 4th. I send them the message today. And if we're in this space where they're really engaged in the conversation, then I'll typically set myself a follow up for anywhere from like 3 to 5 business days, because I don't want to be on them every other day. At the same time, I'm not going to not have a process for following up with them. So I'll go ahead, and once I send that message, I put that reminder to follow up in that, 3 to 5 business days. And then if I don't hear from them, of course, if I hear from them, we continue the conversation, we send out the invite. If I don't hear from them, then I go ahead and send out just a little nudge message. Nothing that's like needy or over the top. It's just like, hey, Jim, I know how things can get busy. Was just curious, and hope my last message didn't add any stress. Was just curious, which time worked better for you to, have that conversation. And then you'll see typically at that point, people will say, oh, sorry, I meant to get back to you. Things have been busy. How about we work at this, go at this time? And that's been my experience, at least for the vast majority of folks, is they'll say that. And then if you're continuing, like people continue to like they don't reply, then I'll wait probably another week, do a message again acknowledging, hey, I know how things get busy, things get lost in the shuffle. Was curious, if, when would be a good time to meet based, these two times that we've listed. And then after that, I wait a couple weeks. Because at a certain point, once you followed up twice, you give them space. And then after those 2 weeks, send a message just checking in on how things are going. So that's my typical process with having these kind of conversations and setting up times to meet with people on exploration calls. And this has been super, super effective for me. And I'm trying to recall the last time I actually had somebody, when I set those up and sent them over, that didn't show up for the conversation. It's been a long time that someone has not shown up for one of those conversations too. So, in my view, I'm a fan of automation in many respects, but in when it comes to booking in these important conversations, I don't trust it to that. Um, I'm putting it in my court because when you do the Calendly, you're putting it in their court, right? And where I do want them to have investment in it, in terms of setting up that conversation, I want to be the one that's initiating that. Because I know, and we all know, that when we add this extra step, it's like adding a piece of resistance to the process. Whereas you're just giving them it right here on a platter. So you're making it super easy for them. They don't have to click on a link. So that's a an obstacle or a block. You're actually making it easy for them to do this whole process. So what do you all think? What's your experience? We have a couple minutes here. Would love to hear what y'all's thoughts are on, do you use Calendly for sales, or use it in any respect in your work or world? What do you find helpful about it? Have you found it helpful in booking conversations and effective in people keeping them? I'm open to hearing and learning. Um, I've just been down that road and used it and got frustrated because people would never go in and click the link and actually book in a time. And then you'd come back around and you go, okay. And then you keep waiting versus, oh, I can just offer them two times. So I think this is a worthwhile conversation to have, because again, this is probably the most important part of it all. If you've worked, hard to initiate the conversation, you built up the trust, and they're at the point of wanting to have a conversation, why would you not make it easy for them, make it easy for you to have that conversation? I beat my head against the wall trying to figure out why when this was happening, and just getting so frustrated. Why aren't you booking in? Why aren't you scheduling a time? And if I think about it for myself, and as Daryl put it so well, like it just, if I have two choices, I'll choose one, right? And when there's too many, like I will stall, as you said. Like it'll like, okay, I'll do that, you know, tomorrow. And tomorrow never becomes actually today. So when you do that, you really push forward that decision for them, and you know, you're helping them in a way. Like if this is a need they're having, um, then you're helping them get to that point. And yeah, sometimes they are just not ready to go deeper, but we want to keep in their thoughts. How do you that posting on LinkedIn work for me? Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Um, and that's okay too. If they're not ready, if they're not at that point of like I'm ready for the conversation, and they've said yes, I'd like to have the conversation. I think that there's two kind of two separate pieces here. One is you've been in the DM, you've built up that trust, you've surfaced the need, you've understood why, what they've tried. Okay, would you be open to that conversation? And then if they've said yes, then that's where this comes in. Now, if they're not replying back in that conversation along the way, I use that same follow up process that I talked about earlier, with not as much urgency. But if I'm noticing that they're engaged, then I'll follow up every week or so, every week for a couple times and a couple weeks, and then at a certain point, I put it off my radar to follow up with them in my system. And as you said, Daryl, then at that point, I have the posts that I'm posting regularly. I'm commenting and engaging regularly on other people within my niche's content, and adding value in those places, not just thanks or hey or good stuff. Like you're actually adding value in those, and in your posts, you're adding value. This is a slow burn. It's not an overnight sensation. And so, to your point, Daryl, you're building that up over time, and that's what those posts do. And so I just think that's the strategy. Um, this is a long game, and so we need to be willing to play it and not just be in a rush to do it. And if they aren't ready, that's okay. We talk about pull and push, and we have to apply that in our work as well. We can't force somebody to be ready. They need to be ready. You don't want to manipulate someone into these kind of conversations. And so that's why building that building the trust, having the conversation, asking those questions is so critical to this whole process. So as I said, an offer for you all, as you're thinking about your business and booking in sales calls, having people keep those calls, if that is a challenge for you, I'd love to have a conversation. I've got 3 spots available to be able to have a conversation, to talk about what's the challenge for you, what you've tried, what the pain points are. So if that's of interest to you, shoot me a DM with Calendly, and I will of course, go ahead and offer you 2 times to be able to choose from, to have the conversation about how to move forward on all these pieces. So again, shoot me a DM Calendly, and we'll have a conversation and help you move forward in this area of frustration. Thanks so much to all of you who've hopped on today. Daryl, thank you so much for hopping in and offering so much value and insight here. And we'll be back next Tuesday for another Lean Coaches. We're going to be on at 9 a.m. Pacific. It's going to be 12 Eastern, so a couple hours later. But this is actually going to be a collaboration with Mark Graben. We're going to be taping a podcast, the Lean Blog podcast, and he's actually going to hop in to be coached. So look out for that. It's already out there. I'll be sharing that invitation as well. So you're going to want to be here next Thursday, again, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern for that. It's going to be fire. I'm super excited to do a blog and coaching, a Lean Blog podcast session, as well as a coaching session. It's going to be a fun time. So again, have a great weekend, y'all. Thanks again for dropping in, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Be well.